Thanks for tuning in. This video is 11 months in the making due to the hydraulic keel needing repair. Also coming up, I move the GPS plotter, solve the problem of rainwater inside the mast coming into the bilge. 4 solar panels arrive and I fit them. I use a different material for the headlining in the Dodger. Find more evidence the boat has had a collision. Do a re-inspection and find one stay has broken strands, and more. Just a quick update, boom bracket. If you're thinking about building one, you could probably make it about 4 or 6 inches shorter here and it still work fine. Now this is one of the running backstays, and I think in one of the other videos I was saying I was going to move it, but I have put it back to its original position, which is right at the very end of the boat. Stern comes through there and up to the winch, and it was here for a reason obviously, and I didn't really think about it at the time. I thought there would be clearance, but the boom needs to be able to swing past this without touching it. Another problem I foresee is the plotter mounted at the wheel at the back, and that is uncontrolled jibe, mainsail flying across the main sheet, the blue rope getting caught around that bracket that holds it and just tearing the whole thing off. No stopping it, and I'll just be crying about all the plotter smashed all over the deck. So it's going to come off. I'm going to mount it up here somewhere, and it's going to be more usable here because I'll be able to come up from inside and make adjustments, and I'll be able to keep a better watch on the plotter than if it's right down the back there, because sometimes you just don't feel like going out there and getting wet just looking at the plotter. A bit of a problem it's been is water comes inside the mast from the halyards, and it seeps out from this joint here, and then it makes its way into the bilge, and then I've got to bail it out every time it rains. There's water in there, so I've made up this piece of angle, and it's sort of like to dam the water, contains this water, and there's a hole here. Drill that hole, and then that goes into a container underneath, and I can, at the moment I can just take the container out and empty it out, but eventually I'll put a bilge pump in there with a float switch. Right now this is working. It really rained heavy last night, and the bilge is pretty dry. It's good. So yeah, that's a problem solved. Having some issues with the hydraulic keel. Started off, not such a big problem, but now it's turned into one. I made a really stupid mistake, and I went to the phone book and looked up a hydraulic mechanic, and they came down, and the whole day was absolute shocking disaster. Hydraulic pump to run the keel, and over there's the motor, and then there's a pump. That's a solenoid. It switches it from one side to the other to lift it up and down. This is all stuff I didn't know about really, and that's the reservoir for keeping the oil. I had advice to bleed it, and the solenoids, one of them could be sticking. Anyhow, I got this fella come down. He said, "Oh no, it's not the solenoids, we'll bleed it or something." Anyway, so he started mucking around there, spraying oil everywhere in here, and then he decided to come up here, and then he said, "Oh, this is no good, we have to take that off." So he undid one of these. The keel was all the way up and it wasn't pinned, and he took one of these off, and it just sprayed oil everywhere, all over the boat, like high pressure oil. It was just unbelievable, all over me, all over everybody, all over the boat, all over the electronics over there. The whole place was covered in oil, probably 10 litres or more of oil, and the keel dropped all the way down and hit the bottom, and it was high tide, and the keel wasn't coming up, and so the boat, and the tide was going out, the boat was starting to heel over, and I was really fretting because I was going to end up with my rig hitting the next door neighbour's rig, and that wouldn't have been very nice. So I was running around buying oil, coming back, and this clown was up there undoing, you know, valves up there, spraying more oil all over the place. You know, it was just like he was like a professional oil sprayer, this fella. Anyway, so eventually managed to get it to work, and it went up. It wasn't going down, but it was going up, and we locked it off. After the oil spraying debacle, I went to CMAC, it's just a local hydraulic company, the one I should have gone to in the beginning. The fellow there, Shane, who's got a boat just up there, he came down. He went down there, found the problem pretty quickly, like within 15 minutes he had found that there's a wire missing. It was just a wire. Out of all the crazy stuff that goes on, it was a wire loose. He fixed it, the thing started going down and up. I should have probably tested it while I was here, but I didn't, and I came down a couple of days later. Thought I'd test it before going for a sail, and I was lowering it, and it just suddenly took off. It's going faster and faster, and then it just fell all the way down till it hit the bottom. And Shane came down again and he checked it. He said that the hydraulic ram in the center here has probably blown some seals or something like that, and it needs to be removed. So that's a bit more serious. We're going to have to go through a whole process of lifting the keel. I've come down a couple of nights in a row now, and at low tide, and first night I put a piece of chain in there, a bit of 8mm chain. Came down the next day, it had broken, that chain, just the weight of it. Maybe it was just, it fell a little bit, and the momentum of it broke the chain. And then last night I did the same thing again, but it was a bit higher this time, and it's still, the chain's sitting in position. It hasn't broken, hopefully not. I waited a couple of days and the chain looked solid, so I moved the boat to a sandbank and used the run out tide to push the keel all the way up to the locking pins. The hydraulic ram was removed and the new seals were put in, but it couldn't be put back because it wouldn't fit inside the outer tube. So then the outside tube needed to be removed. It took some force with a jack to get it out, and the tube came out bent. I was told that it needed to be replaced, and the tube can't be found here in Fiji, so it had to be imported. So while waiting, I got to work on some of the other jobs that needed to be done. I was going to use plywood for the lining. The plywood in Fiji is real rubbish. I don't think it would last, it would fall apart in no time. So I come across this stuff called Alka panel. It's 3mm or 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's plastic with a sheet of aluminium that's been painted. And I put the first piece up, and it pretty much fitted all the way around quite nicely, except for here. I don't want to talk about it, but this was supposed to be on the other side and I cut it. So make mistakes to live with them. If I had used plywood, I would have had to paint it, and this one looks actually quite neat. It can't rot. I think it's just a pretty good product. It's a little bit heavier than plywood, but not much. It's only 3mm thick, 1/8 of an inch. Better for keeping a watch. I'll be able to have my plotter here. I can get a good view around inside the dodger. Everything's dry, and I don't have to go down to the back, around the back of the wheel to look at the plotter, which is a bit of a chore, and I just wasn't doing it. I ended up using my phone, the plotter on my phone, to navigate from Australia to Fiji because it's just too difficult to go back there. And I don't have to go very far. I can stick my head back down, have a bit of a snooze, come up again, and this will be more of an easier routine than like it was before. 400-watt solar panels arrived by sea freight from Australia. It was cheaper than buying locally. So we have the solar panels here for the back rail, and I've using 2x1 aluminium here on to strengthen it up, and I've made up these plates 1/8, and they'll be all pop riveted together, and this U bracket is all I could find in Suva, and that will go around the rail, so they'll get bolted. Probably have some rubber or something. So we'll see how it all goes. I'll put it together, get it down to the boat. Fitting the solar panels, one on each side. I'm using these aluminium tabs I've made, and they slot up inside, and then there'll be a bolt that will be tapped into this from the outside. I just put a little tapping screw in there to make sure I put it in the right position first, because it's actually quite critical. But I think I will pop rivet it down instead of using self-tappers. I've got bolts, but just a bit of a pain on my own to fit them, so I think I'll just use pop rivets, aluminium pop rivets, see how that goes. I decided not to get flexible solar panels. I like the low profile and the lightness, but they are way too weak and easy to damage, so it's best to get the hard panels. I think they'll last longer. Solar panels on the roof of the Dodger, so I've still got plenty of room to stand up here and walk around to stow the mainsail. It's not taken up all with solar panels, so that's what I wanted. And originally I was going to put all 4 up here, but decided it's better to put 2 down there, 1 on each side on the back rail, and that way I'd get another vantage point to the sun, because this area here could quite often be shaded by the mainsail, so the panels might not be working as well. So now I've got all 4 panels going, and it's really cranking the power out. It's really good. The normal way people do is they put a rack at the back there, frame, and put the solar panels up the top. Now that's actually quite a good way, in the way that it sort of puts it right out in a clear spot, so there's less chance of being shaded. But I didn't want the windage, I didn't want to build that extra weight. This way here, down here is well, less windage, but it does have a little bit of a risk where it could get smacked by a wave, but we'll see how it goes, because I have had waves completely come across the back of the boat there. So this solar controller is running the 2 panels on the back rails, and this one here my brother gave to me before I left Australia, and that's doing ones on the Dodger top. And they're really pumping in some power into these batteries. I think they're about 100 amps each. I've got 1 on each side. The second sheet of auger panel went up, and it was a little difficult to get in position on my own. I like the clean finish, and I think it should be durable. Made up these 2, these are for the back rails to adjust, to push them out. So just a piece of 3mm aluminium that I had left over from the Dodger. The floor out of here, and I think that probably was the first time it's ever come out. Gave it a big clean, scoured everything with detergent, and I discovered that this stringer here, all the welds are broken from the hull plate. You put a tack weld on here, a tack weld on here, onto the plate, and then you'd put the wedge in here and hit it, and that would bring the plate up against this stringer. But now I've discovered the actual stringer's bent. When I put it on here, it's rocking, it's quite bent. So it's kind of looking like more and more likely that there was a collision, and it's whacked in here and bent this stringer, broken the welds. So anyway, just a change of repair method now. Make up some tabs, put them along, and they'll get welded to bridge that gap so that gap will stay there. That plate is probably flexing a bit up against the stringer there. So this is the area here where the leak was, where it was leaking out of the edge of the weld. So maybe that flexing had something to do with that. Not sure, but I will be re-welding all that soon, and this stringer and re-welded. That's the good thing about metal boats, they're quite easy to fix, and it's not a big job at all. It's probably a couple of hours and it'll be all done. So, and once it's done, it's back to as strong as new. So that's why I like metal boats. I'm really a big fan of metal boats. The area where we have the bent stringer, I decided to put an extra string on each side. These ones here, I've just cut them to length. So I'll just do a little bit more whittling and they should fit in there nicely. It's, you know, it might not be necessary to put it in, but it's just going to make it stronger. And we're going to be welding here, we're welding there. Might as well just do all this welding area, do this whole area will be, you know, the paint's going to get blistered on the outside, it's going to need to be redone. So I might as well get it all over and done with, make it extra strong, and yeah, like an icebreaker. Holy moly, don't like to look down. And this is the first time I've been up here. I did a self-inspection of the rig. You know, not that I'm an expert, but I found one broken wire on a right on a swage on one of the intermediate stays. It's got the wire, it's broken. It's actually probably more than one broken. I'm going to have to replace it, I think. That's a smart thing to do. It's probably okay, but I'll check with the rigger, see what they say. I know what they're going to say. They say replace it. So also the two spinnaker halyards seem like they've had the sheaths worn off them. So this is the halyard for the masthead spinnaker, and it's chafed or sun damaged, the outside layer, and so that needs to be replaced. And so unfortunately has a 3/4 halyard as well for the spinnaker. Same thing happened. I end for ended both the spinnaker halyards, and that will save buying new rope. A new replacement stay arrived from the rigger in Lautoka. A lot of work goes into making these videos, and I appreciate any help. If you would like to contribute, please log on to patreon.com/Captain Scarlegs. Big thanks to Tom H and Wazine for staying with me, and from the past, Mark Farrow, Anthony Cleaton and Dan Knights. Thank you. And replace the stay and tighten both sides. I went to see Shane to check on the hydraulic ram repair.
You can't see it unless you measure it, but it's bulged about 2.5 millimeters. So that's just created by too much pressure inside the cylinder. When you rotate it,
Yeah.
you should be able to see.
Yeah. Fantastic.
But there's actually scratch marks inside from the piston. When the piston got stuck inside there, it scored the inside. One of the other reasons why it has to be replaced. You can tell, but the wall thickness on this tube is only about 3.3 mil. Whereas the new tube is just over 7. They're just setting up a bracket to hold the new tube so we can machine the inside of it. Because it's actually a water pipe, it has a seam in it. So we've got to machine out the little ridge that's the seam. So we're just making a bracket in the lathe, and our boring bar is in the lathe, and we're going to bore the center out of the tube. So to try and help the rods, the tube stay in the center of the boring bar, but it bound up before and got tight and we broke it off, so we've had to redo it again. We actually broke the bar just here, and it actually bent the bar slightly, so we've had to make a male-female piece to join them, and then we had to use it welding on one side to try and get straight again.
In the end, this seam stainless steel tube didn't work. It was too hard to machine. I found some heavy-walled seamless stainless steel tube, and this also couldn't be machined because the tube wasn't round by 1.5 millimeters. This was a big loss because the tube cost an arm and a leg. In the end, hydraulic steel tube was used, and the outside sandblasted and zinc painted. It is submerged in salt water inside the keel, and I guess this will be something I have to remove to check for corrosion every few years. All this added up to delays. As you can see in the video, the hydraulic ram arrived to the boat and it looked great. Freshly painted, but unfortunately the outside diameter with the added paint made it too large to fit inside the keel. Some adjustments were made, but in the end it had to go back to be machined another 2 millimeters from the outside. When the keel failed and needed repair, I was fretting that it would take a whole week. Now it's 11 months and I've learned a good lesson in being patient. It's getting very close now and I'm looking forward to sailing again properly. But in the meantime, I will sail over the Christmas break with the keel up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, happy sailing.